Hello, everyone. We are going to be talking about agility in the face of economic uncertainty. I am joined by Javier Varela from Volvo Cars, Mario Rivera from CVS Health, and Jiahui Yin from On Running. And the first question for you is, what is in your supply chain, and what in your supply chain is the most pressing economic issue right now that is either keeping you awake at night or keeping you busy during the day, or both?
Hi, everyone. I am Jiahui. I'm from On. We are a sportswear company based in Zurich, Switzerland. So I would say over the last 2 years, obviously, there were many pressing issues on all our table, running operations or supply chain. I would say right now, there's obviously the bigger topic of geopolitical risks that could actually burst out at any time. Our industry is heavily reliant on OEM. A lot of our production happens in Asia. Even if your production is not in China, you still have materials or parts coming out of China pretty much in everyone's supply chain. So that's definitely a topic. There's always also the topic of kind of labor shortage and how much you are dependent on labor. That's also a topic.
Now, Mario, we hear from a lot of our community that we need to be more agile and more prepared for uncertainty, volatility, etc. Now, you're in a mix of health retailing. How have you become more agile in the face of economic uncertainty? What does that mean for you?
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for inviting me. Mario Rivera, responsible for supply chain and logistics within CVS Health. Most people know us as a retail pharmacy company, but we're much more than that. Look, I think the best example that I can think of is some of the investments that we're starting to make to modernize our warehouse management system. I think that's probably one that can be very easy to relate, very pragmatic for anybody that works in supply chain across industries. We're modernizing our warehouse management system, moving from on-premise, more of the older school warehouse management systems to cloud-based technology. And we think that that's really going to allow us to better connect inventory placement across our distribution centers and also be able to move and respond faster to demand changes to place the inventory across our 10,000 stores. We're just getting started on that journey, but we're confident that it's going to really help us with agility.
Yeah. Thank you. Javier, just coming to you now, digitization and tech solutions. Chat GPT and AI. What is actually going to be the game changer of all this digitization and tech to becoming more agile in economic uncertainty?
First of all, thank you for having me here. I'm Javier Varela, Chief Operating Officer at Volvo Cars, a company with a clear purpose that is providing freedom to move in a sustainable, safe, and personal way. The world around us is changing, of course. We are in a new tech stack, moving from ICE combustion engines towards full electric, moving to autonomous cars, moving to core compute, moving to connectivity. All the cars are connected. And I will not name all the technologies that are coming into the cars. But something very important supporting all these technologies is data. AI and data analytics will be really new enablers for getting to a different levels that probably today we haven't identified yet the use cases. Some of them are well identified, but I think they're going to make a big difference.
Because a lot of the stuff that you're mentioning, your cars need a lot of semiconductors, and there's been a lot of disruption in semiconductors, need a lot of software engineers, and there's a lot of disruption in supply of software engineers. You're managing the supply chain of your company. How have you been doing that? How do you make sure that people can still get cars and of the right spec that they want?
We have a clear strategy and clear ambitions, where in 2030 we want to become a full electric. We will produce and sell only electrical cars. In 2040, we want to be climate neutral in all of our operations. We are transforming our supply chain to be lean, green, and digital. And it's true, we have had some bumps in the road, but we are not changing our strategy. Our focus is there. Those bumps in the road, you mentioned some of them, but I will start by the pandemics. In the last couple of years, we have been suffering from that issue. As an example, last year in China, Shanghai, a 25 million people city, has been closed for 2 months. We have had the semiconductor scarcity, the semiconductor shortage. We have had the logistic concerns. We have had the war in Ukraine. The day after, or a few days after the war started, the raw materials went to the roof. Raw materials, in some cases, very rich, I would say, in the battery vehicles. Mm-hmm. And despite of that, we don't change course. We stay on course. We want to be electrified. So how we deal with those issues, being lean, green, and digital in the supply chain help. But what helps as well is to have teams that are really engaged, that work cross-functionally, that are able to keep that course I was referring to, but at the same time solving problems in real time. Other formulas there is establishing relations with suppliers, key suppliers above tier one, so upstream but beyond the tier one suppliers. We learned that with the semiconductors. Before, we were only having relations with the tier ones. Now we are securing capacity and we are having discussions, operational and tactical discussions with the semiconductor suppliers. The plants have learned how to adapt to be much more flexible in terms of changes in the production mix. The logistics have learned as well how to handle different components in record time and adapt the value chain in different way. So those are some of the secrets, but I want to highlight the importance of people and good leadership, good management, engagement, running and going the extra mile to secure production and to secure deliveries. In this case, it was in almost an hourly basis, right?
If I may chime into that, so we don't use semiconductors in our footwear or garment, but I think it's a very good example in terms of building agility throughout supply chain, right? And I totally agree with Javier. I think in the end, people is the most important thing. Like one thing that doesn't change in supply chain is there will be disruptions here and there. There will always be unexpected demand fluctuations here and there. Yeah. So having a team that is ready for that change, that agility mindset is probably the most important thing. But I think that is super important that we shouldn't forget about is data and making sure that you're even aware of when disruptions happen, what's the potential implication, which relates back to what you shared about how CVS is trying to move your inventory data on the cloud rather than on the premise to be able to have better transparency and connection of actually understanding what's happening and be able to communicate that change either towards your suppliers trying to secure more capacity or to your customers to manage their expectation, right? So I think that's something that is very important. Obviously, then there's also the content piece in terms of how you can get more capacity from your suppliers, shorten your lead time, make it leaner, and also making contingency plans. I mean, a bit like automotive, like every single pair of shoe is probably composed of like 100 components, right? So you have your bill of materials, you know where each material come from, but then you also need to have plan B for everything in case something falls out, right? And then when disruptions happen, how do you quickly activate your plan B to make sure that you can resume as much as you can? So I think that these are all important components, but I think semiconductor was a very big and extreme example, but small disruptions happen all the time. That's kind of part of our lives.
True.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what comes to mind is we talk a lot about consumer-centric supply chains, right? And many companies are moving away from this cost-centric environment and treating their supply chains as a back office cost center and really seeing it as a strategic enabler, which is really what we've been all along. But I think the pandemic just exposed that. But one of the things that we're being very intentional at CVS Health, we've had a lot of discussion around, for us to become consumer-centric, we need to put our colleagues at the forefront. If we're not doing it through the lens of our frontline colleagues, it's going to be very difficult for us to then ask them to take care of their customer, right? So it's kind of that lean CI mindset that I know Javier is also very familiar with, of if you take care of your team and you consistently demonstrate that behavior, they will help you take care of your customer. And in the long run, that should translate to better shareholder outcomes, right? And so we're trying to be very intentional at CVS Health at, putting our colleagues first, our pharmacists, our technicians, our front store colleagues, our DC colleagues, our transportation colleagues, really making sure that we're going above and beyond in any way that we can to make them feel like they're at the center of what we do. Yeah. I've learned this throughout my career, not just here at CVS Health. Sometimes we get into the false narrative that technology is going to be proportional negative to the team. And what I've seen is that's when it's done incorrectly. If you do it the right way, which is, as Javier mentioned, people, process, technology, in that order. If you prioritize people and then you focus on having the right process foundations, then technology is there to assist in that process and to assist the team member, to assist the associate and then the colleague. And when you do that, then you inspire trust in your colleagues because they see that your end game is not to invest in digital technologies or automation or whatever you're investing in. You're doing it to help them. So it's a fine balance. It's not easy to do, but if you do it through that lens, I've seen throughout my career that it leads to much better outcomes.
I want to stay with you for a minute and shift gear a little bit. The QR code is definitely something that the citizens of the world have embraced since COVID. I know it was popular in Asia before, but since COVID, everybody's very used to the QR code, and you can order your food and you can scan whatever, etc. It's been a consumer behavior change since the pandemic. If you look at your business, what has been the one consumer behavior change that has changed demand or changed the way they shop? Or what's the single biggest thing that had the largest impact on running your supply chain that came after the COVID crisis?
I think COVID, in my opinion, just exposed some of the fractures, the cracks that were already there in many industries. And it was very difficult across industries for us to respond to a crisis of that magnitude, right? There was no system that predicted what was going to happen, and to that extent. For us, and I'm going to focus more on the retail part of our business, our retail pharmacy, what happened is this accelerated move to online, to e-commerce, right? We were in lockdown, people couldn't go out. And so those companies that already had a great digital platform to assist their consumers were obviously better off than those that weren't. We're very proud that we were able to move swiftly. My colleagues, my peers at CVS really did an amazing job at stepping up and leading the country's response to the pandemic and leading with 78 million plus vaccines and 58 million plus COVID test kits and counting. And that built a lot of trust with the consumer because they saw how we had to mobilize. To me, it was very inspiring and one of the reasons that I decided to join. But now as we got into 2022 and kind of things starting to get back to normal to some extent, what we've seen is now a shift from the consumer where now they want more of a little bit of everything. And so that same consumer one day may be interested in buying in store and going to brick and mortar. And so for those that said that brick and mortar was dead 10 plus years ago, I think clearly they were wrong. Some consumers still want to buy in store. And I think the pandemic, after the long lockdown periods, made that value come back to consumers' minds of, I really miss shopping in the store. And then that same consumer, he may go the next day, I'd rather buy online and just pick it up in store. And then still, because of the pandemic, of course, now we have consumers that are more and more used to ordering online and expecting a home delivery directly at their doorstep. So we're making a lot of investment. Our digital teams, our merchandising teams, our marketing teams are fantastic. And they're doing a wonderful job at trying to strike that balance so that we can provide that omni-channel experience. And one I'm proudest of, obviously, selfishly, is that our supply chain and logistics team is behind it, right? We're the engine behind that. If we're not moving the product where it's needed, then all the other things fall apart. So it's been a really good cross-functional collaboration in 2022 and into 2023 already.
Excellent. I want to go back to you, Jiahui. You're in sportswear. Where's the consumer on all of this? Do you see a role for tech and digitization in accelerating that journey? And if so, how?
We're really massively lack of data transparency and then how different players along the value chain communicate in terms of the decarbonization effort, which needs to be a joint effort of everyone together. The IT tools that people are using, which there are some out there, is that enough? I don't think it's enough. And also the awareness is not there. So for sure, I see a lot of things that we need the assistance of tech and tools. Like one example, like a simple piece of garment or a pair of footwear probably have 5 layers of supply supply, right? So from the tier one supplier who put the shoe together to the one who is eventually kind of harvesting cotton in the field. Very few of us even know who are our tier 3 or tier 4 suppliers. And how can you actually calculate your scope 3 if you don't even know who they are? And there you really need good tools to help us map out our supply chain, audit the supply chain, and also record data, and then to be able to report and consolidate data. Currently in the whole scope 3 calculation, carbonization talk, there's also a lot of either double counting or miscounting in the accounting of carbon as well along this whole chain. So I think eventually tech has to play a very big role in bringing transparency and making it easier for people to even report and talk about this.
Yeah. Javier, you're a 30-year veteran in the automotive industry. How do you keep your own agility up? How do you reinvent yourself?
I appreciate the question. Not a dinosaur, but absolutely, the industry is changing, not only the product itself, but the ways how we are producing. So you need to be extremely curious. Start by that, being curious. And I'm curious like hell. I love learning and investigating and understanding, and sometimes stripping down stuff to understand more. And, I'm a passionate lean management. And I've lived with lean management for a while. And there's something in lean management that is going to Gemba. So it's go where the action is happening. And I think that has an enormous value to learn. You can help the teams coaching, asking the right questions, but you can learn as well. Yesterday, in one of the huddles, we had a fantastic discussion about reverse mentoring. So how top management can learn from the teams as well, being up to date and being able to have a right discussion when it comes to completely new technologies.
If you would be able to turn back time to the 1st of January 2020, with all the knowledge, what would happen? What would 3 things be that you would have done differently?
Like really, when I look back, there are probably not a lot of things that I think we did wrong per se in the last couple of years. A lot of tough decisions, a lot of it people related, small fine tunes here and there, right? If you know there will be fluctuations, market coming down, the market going back up, things you could have optimized. But I feel like overall, it's just really believing in things will always work out and humanity always win, and really believe in the team and the future. Happy not to go back to 2020.
I can imagine. So one word, everyone, what's next?
Better future where people move more and run more.
One word is tough. The reason why we're here in this forum, right, to me is very inspiring. Talking about climate change, biggest challenge is, I think short term is stabilizing our supply chains and fully recovering from the pandemic. But mid and long term is really committing to bold action and moving the line on climate change. And we have a big opportunity as industry leaders to really influence that and not rely on others of making that happen. Not to be sentimental, but I think about my kids, right? I have a 15-year-old son who's awesome, my son Mario, and my daughter Natalia, who's 12 and is awesome. And I want to spend more of my time in the rest of my career being intentional about moving the needle forward on all things climate change.
If I see it from the eyes of the car industry, I would say that the future is electric. And we are contributing through that to our sustainability ambitions. And saving the people, saving the planet is one of our big efforts that we are doing every day.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining. I thought it was a very enjoyable discussion. Thank you for your passion, for your leadership, for your candor, for your authenticity. I think this very clearly what supply chain leadership for the future needs, and it's been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
This episode of Radical Reinvention was produced by Catherine Perry, Brian Egan, Ursuline Kahn, Anna Wooding, Nick Heineman, Duda Rodriguez, and me, Victoria Marin. Ko Takasugi Chernovin composed our theme music. To find out more about Zero100 and to check out our content library, go to zero100.com. If you're interested in joining our community of contributors, send us a note at hello@zero100.com.